Robert Half research indicates 9 out of 10 hiring managers are having difficulty hiring. If you have open roles, chances are you're feeling this too. That's why you need Robert Half. Their specialized recruiting professionals engage their skills with their award-winning AI to connect businesses of all sizes with highly skilled talent in finance and accounting, technology, marketing and creative, legal, and administrative and customer support. At Robert Half, they know talent. Visit roberthalf.com today.
This fall, every day is your runway at JCPenney. Whether you're refreshing your wardrobe for a big night out or creating your signature everyday look to rock while you're running errands, JCPenney has the fashion-forward, budget-friendly styles you need to look and feel your best. JCPenney has looks for the whole family, from timeless workwear for mom from Liz Claiborne to Stafford's tailored polished pieces for dad. Or keep it casual with classic options from St. John's Bay. And for trendy youthful styles, Arizona is perfect for juniors.
And don't forget to explore JCPenney Beauty to find your favorite beauty brands or try something new this season. From suiting and sweaters to dressed-up denim and utility trends for the whole family, JCPenney has everything you need to express your style. Fall is a pivotal season in fashion, so make the world your runway and get the best styles at the best prices from JCPenney. Shop in-store or online. JCPenney. Make it count. Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about cutting-edge science, the wisdom of the ages, contemporary culture, our own experiences, about how to make our lives happier. This week, we'll talk about the value of observing a sour hour, and I will share some helpful hacks about how to deal with muscle pain. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies good habits, human nature, the 5 senses, secrets of adulthood, the open door, or you could call it the empty nest. I'm in New York City, and joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister Elizabeth Kraft, my sister the Sage.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And Gretch, I guarantee I will be indulging in some sour hours.
Okay.
It's very up my alley.
Yeah, it sounds very useful. But before we jump in, a few updates. We were talking about trails and hikes and walks and all that. And Robin wrote to say, my son informed me that if a trail is paved, it is not a hike. I think that's very interesting. When I am going in Central Park, it is flat and it is also paved. So it is definitely a walk and not a hike.
All right. We now know how to categorize. Yeah, Gretchen. And then recently we talked about turning acquaintances into friends. And a listener wrote in and said, thank you so much for episode 501 on turning acquaintances into friends. I am in one of the loneliest seasons of my life now as my youngest child is in rehab for mental health issues. Unfortunately, the stigma of mental health struggles can cause old friends to drift away. But your episode prompted me to take initiative and give my contact info to the other moms in my parents' support group. I've already made one close connection, and I plan to reach out to 2 more future friends tonight when I see them. There is something really powerful about a connection that is built on authenticity, even when it's really messy.
Well, this is so terrific to hear that this discussion was so useful and that this person put it into practice so quickly. That's really terrific that it was making a difference, because in the end, it is these relationships that can do so much to make our lives happier.
Absolutely.
Now, this week, our Try This at Home tip is to observe sour hour. Okay, so this is the latest in a series. So in my book, Better Than Before, which is all about how to make and break habits, I talked about power hour, which is if there are things that you want to get yourself to do, but that you can't turn into a habit, like going to the hardware store to get some oddball light bulb or something, you can do a power hour once a week. You can have the habit of a power hour, and in that hour, you just tackle whatever needs to be done. And what I found is that you can do more in an hour than you think, and there's a lot of satisfaction from just knocking these little nagging tasks off the to-do list. They're just things that can be done at any time or often done at no time. And so power hour is a way to make a time for those kinds of things. Well, building from that, a listener said, well, you could have empower hour, which is when you set aside an hour to do something that explicitly puts your values into the world. Because, of course, we're happier when we do put our values into the world. But again, something that can be done at any time is often done at no time. And so it's a great way to say, like, at the very least for 1 hour, I'm going to do something that puts my values out into the world.
We've been talking a lot about voting. A lot of people are using their Empower Hour to send postcards, I've noticed.
So that's a great way because you're like, I'm going to do something to support voting with my Empower Hour. So then Michaela has a great suggestion picking up on the idea of Power Hour.
Yeah, she says, I was pondering Power Hour and the fluency heuristic and came up with the idea of Sour Hour. Sour hour is when you limit sulking and bitterness over an issue to 1 hour in order to work through your emotions. I understand that certain issues will take more time to resolve, but the idea is to limit negative emotions whilst allowing time to feel, akin to scheduling time to worry.
Okay, so she's referring to a couple things. One is the fluency heuristic, which is the idea that if something is particularly memorable, like if it rhymes or it's said in a particularly interesting way, it will have more power in the mind because it's easier to remember and easier to hold on to. It's more powerful. So that's why Power Hour or Empower Hour or Sour Hour have the fluency heuristic. And she's also mentioning the idea of scheduling time to worry. And this is something that we've talked about several times, which is if you feel like you're ruminating constantly or you're sort of worrying all the time, you can schedule time to worry and say, okay, I'm going to schedule every day at 3, or I'm only going to worry Saturdays from 2 to 2:30. You have your pad and paper and you worry then. So you're not ignoring those worries or pretending that they don't exist. You're just limiting the time. And so they get the attention that they need. These worries are not constantly running through your mind. And so I love the idea that Sour Hour is like that for worry, for those sour things that we're thinking.
And it reminds me, Gretchen, of sometimes when you call someone and say, I just need to vent.
Yes.
I need to have a sour hour. I need to be angry about this. I need to be bitter. I need to be petty, but I don't want to spend my whole day being petty.
Right.
So let me do it now, and then I will rise above.
Yeah.
Kind of also made me think, Gretchen, of the show Shrinking, which is a great show about a therapist who's lost his wife. And one of the things they talk about in that show is setting aside time to grieve. So he'll set an actual timer on the phone and just cry and grieve for 15 minutes and then continue his day. Obviously, that's not to say when you're going through the grieving process, it's a 24/7. It's not 15 minutes, but it's just allowing that time to just fully feel your feelings and not deal with the world around you.
Right.
So it reminded me of that.
Right. Well, it kind of reminded me of Broadcast News, which is that movie from 1987, such a good movie. But the main character in it cries for 5 minutes every morning. And you see her throughout the movie. She takes the phone off the hook because it's 1987. And she just cries very methodically, very regularly. And that's her time probably to feel sorry for herself or whatever it is. And so again, it's scheduling that time. This is more like petty grievances that can take over your mind or, those things. It's not about these really serious issues that need to be addressed in a major way. But a lot of us have these minor things that can nevertheless take up a lot of time and a lot of energy inside our heads.
Yes. And some of them might not be so minor, like you're fired from a job you think unfairly. That can bother you for years.
Yes, it can.
I speak from experience on this. And still to this day, sometimes Sarah and I will just have a little session where we talk about how unfair that was, but then we move on.
Right. But and even saying something like, okay, we're going to spend 15 minutes talking about that.
Yes.
And then we're not going to, but no more.
Mention it for another 6 months. Yeah.
Right. So let us know if you do try this at home and how scheduling a sour hour works for you. Is that an idea that resonates with you? Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@GretchenRubin.com or go to happiercast.com/504 for everything related to this episode.
Okay, Gretch, coming up, we've got a happiness hack related to those knots we all get in our muscles. You have some info you're going to share. But first, this break. Gretch, so many of us are trying to understand our bodies and how we can become healthier. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs.
And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. Lumen is so easy to use. I find it extremely easy to set up, and it is just fascinating to know what's going on inside our bodies. And because our metabolism is at the center of everything our bodies do, optimal metabolic health translates into a bunch of benefits. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/happier to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/happier for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
All right, Gretch, we are back, and you learned about muscle knots recently.
Yes. Okay, so this is from the New York Times, so I'm just sharing what I learned from a very useful New York Times article. But Elizabeth, you know that feeling where you've always sort of had this curiosity or these like unresolved questions in your mind, and then you randomly come across an article and you're like, this is exactly what I needed. Like, all my questions are answered. Now I know exactly what to do. It's very exciting for me. I love that. That made me very happy as a reader. So I wanted to share what I learned about muscle knots.
Well, I get them, so I want to hear this.
Okay, so turns out that muscle knots, no surprise, you get them when the muscle is overloaded, maybe through exercise, maybe through poor posture, but anyway, they get overtaxed. And that can make certain points shorten or tighten and then stay that way. So they're sort of balled up and it makes this dense ball. And what the researchers think is that that may lead to decreased blood flow and fluid in that area, as well as inflammation. And it's all tightly packed in there. And that also makes the whole thing more uncomfortable. And so it's because you've created that tight, dense, packed area that's not getting the blood flow and the fluid that it needs. And so they don't think that they cause irreversible damage, but they can be uncomfortable or even cause you chronic pain. And most go away, in a week or two. But one thing is like, okay, what do you do if you have a muscle knot? Now, one of the things that always puzzled me is when I have muscle knots, sometimes people would say, okay, use ice. And then sometimes people would use heat. So I was always in this analysis paralysis because I'm like, well, which one is going to work? And for some reason, studies suggest that they can both help. So pick whatever you want. I like heat better, but if you like ice better. Also, stretching can help, partly because you sort of are helping everything get more fluid. Everything's just gliding around better. And then, massage can help. But this is interesting. They theorize that it helps because of blood flow, that when you press on a knot, it restricts blood flow. And then when you release the pressure, then blood flows in. And that's part of what helps the area to heal, is it's getting more of that. And so you can have a person do it, but then this is what Jamie does, because Jamie gets muscle knots a lot, is he has a roller or a tennis ball, and he'll use it and he'll roll over it. And that's a way to get massaged in a particular place. If you don't have somebody to do it for you, you can do it yourself.
Well, this is all good to know, Gretchen.
Now, where do you get muscle knots, Elizabeth? An Achilles heel that's maybe not your heel?
I think in my shoulders. And it's probably because writing and hunching over. And I have been trying to have better posture. I even noticed when you were talking, I started sitting up straighter because I go, oh, yeah, I'm definitely hunching.
Yeah.
But yeah, right in my shoulder near my neck is my spot. What about you?
Exactly the same. If something goes bad, it's there. Or my lower back. I haven't had lower back in a long, long time. I think sometimes things get fragile, or like something bad happens once and then it seems like then you re-injure it. But now I'm not doing lower back as much. It's more shoulder neck. So it's you and me both.
Yeah.
And now for a happiness stumbling block. Back in episode 481, we talked about the value of avoiding avoidance, how avoidance can actually make problems worse, not better, even though it's often very tempting to avoid something. And we heard from a couple of listeners who had good points to make.
Yes, Beth said, hi, Gretchen. I was just listening to this week's podcast, and your discussion on avoidance reminded me of a lesson I learned very early in my career that was crystallized for me many years later in a short phrase shared with me by a senior executive. When wondering whether one ought to communicate up the corporate chain about a problem or something that has gone wrong, it is always best to remember that bad news never gets better with age. I say that all the time when discussing issues with coworkers, and it is so much better than worrying that folks will, quote, shoot the messenger.
That is such a good reminder that you can avoid it. But in the end, if there's bad news that's going to come out, often it's just worse and worse the longer you wait. Often problems get more complicated, options become more limited, more people become entangled with it. It's hard to be the bearer of the bad news, but that's a great counterpoint because we all know that phrase, don't shoot the messenger. And we know it because people really often do shoot the messenger. So this is a good reminder. Nope, power through it, avoid avoidance.
Yes. And we have talked, Gretchen, about don't be the bearer of bad news if you don't have to.
If you don't have to.
But if you have to, you have to.
Well, that's a very good distinction, which is don't volunteer to bring bad news. If something's going to become evident through a process, you're telling people isn't going to affect it one way or another. It's like, don't get in front of that. But if there's something that needs to be fixed or this is something that's going wrong, that you do need to do. Yeah, it's like me saying to Eleanor, you may not get your first choice of seminar, but she knows that. The materials say that, and it doesn't make any difference whether I tell her that or remind her of that, because that's just the situation. But if there's something that could be done, then you don't want to sit on that bad news, because if somebody could take action, you want them to be able to do that.
And then Sonia said, don't leave an appointment before making the next appointment on their calendar. Dentist, annual physical, car service, teacher conference, return doctor visit, eye exam, mammogram, colonoscopy, even if the date is years out. Even if you can't imagine where you will be or if you'll be free on that date, make that appointment anyway. Having an appointment on someone else's calendar is a motivator and an avoidance.
Yes.
Yeah, Gretch, we have talked about this many times and have trouble following through with it ourselves.
Yes. I don't know why it is so hard for me to do this, but it is really good. And Sonia is exactly right. You don't know what's going to be convenient for you in a year, but the fact that it's there, it's a placeholder, and then you'll remember, okay, I have to reschedule it. And maybe it will work out. I mean, a lot of times obligers need accountability. And so if it's there, they'll be like, okay, well, I guess I do need to go to the dentist because I see this is on my calendar. I, for some reason, though, absolutely resist doing this.
Yes, me too.
But then I have found, sort of related to this, a kind of avoidance that I'm now trying to avoid is procrastination by consultation. And so what I keep telling myself is, do I need more time? Do I need a consultation, or do I just need to make a decision? Because I feel like some of the ways that I justify avoidance in myself is I tell myself, well, I need to talk to somebody about this. I need to talk to you, Elizabeth, about it. Or I need to talk to Jamie about something. I'm trying to really remind myself, do I really need that person's input? Or do I just need to move forward? Do I just need to make a decision? Do I just need to face the situation? Because sometimes I want to offload that onto somebody else or make them consult with me or just use it as a way to procrastinate because I'm like, oh, it's early in the morning and Alyssa's not awake in Pacific time, so I need to wait until later so I could call her. And it's like, you don't need to ask Elizabeth about this at all. So that's a form of avoidance that I'm trying to really be much more aware of in myself.
Yes. This classic example of this is the plane ticket where you're like, well, I'm not going to get a plane ticket now. I'm going to talk to Adam. But I know, is Adam going to want to take a 6 a.m. flight or an 11 a.m. flight? I know the answer to that. I really don't need to consult with him.
Yeah. And the thing is that this saps your energy. Every once in a while, problems go away, decisions go away, just enough that you kind of hope that it will work. But usually it doesn't. Usually it just saps your energy. It stays just as hard, or if anything, it gets harder. So it's worth thinking about, is there something I need to avoid avoiding? Because it really can just be something that is dragging you down.
Yes. And I think for obligers like I am, Gretchen, definitely having accountability is key to avoiding avoidance.
Yeah.
Sarah and I are back on a schedule, having work due, and it definitely helps us avoid avoidance. And Gretch, speaking of avoidance, I am avoiding something as my demerit. So this conversation continues after the break. Gretchen, you know I love quince.
Mm-hmm.
And as summer turns to fall, even here in LA, it's getting cooler. I love slipping into my quince cozy sweaters. In fact, I'm wearing one right now. I'm wearing one of my cashmere tees. I absolutely love all of their cashmere. They're known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from just $50. And it's not just that. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
Well, and how do they do that? By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, which passes the saving on to us, the consumer. Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. Gretch, I hang out with a lot of women and we have a lot of conversations. And one thing that every woman shares is that eventually she's going to go through menopause and perimenopause. And people talk about the hot flashes, the insomnia, the brain fog, the moodiness, the weight gain. Well, MIDI clinicians are menopause experts equipped to support you with safe, effective, FDA-approved medications, as well as supplements, lifestyle coaching, and preventative health guidance.
All their services are covered by insurance, and they're conveniently accessible through telehealth visits and 24/7 messaging. You know, when we need help, we want to know that we can come out of an experience feeling heard, with a plan to start feeling better, with people who are really experts in their field. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to at work and social settings around our family. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask. For me, therapy helped me really find my voice, which is so important when you want to be present and be yourself.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Gretchen Rubin today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gretchen Rubin. Okay, Elizabeth, it is time for demerits and gold stars, and you foreshadowed a demerit, and this is an even-numbered episode, which means it is your turn to give us a demerit. So what is this avoidance-related demerit that you're going to tell us about?
All right, so this is adjacent to other demerits I have given myself.
They're all related to each other.
Yes, they're all related. That's
Cascades
very
of
true.
demerits.
And we all just give ourselves the same demerits over and over.
Yeah.
This is Jack related, my son, my 14-year-old. There's an appointment that I need to make for him. Mm-hmm. And I've just been avoiding doing it. Mm-hmm. And partly it's because it's not just calling and making an appointment. I have to gather some materials for the appointment.
Yeah.
But Gretchen, I have gotten emails reminding me like, hey, you need to make this appointment. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if I just sat down and said, okay, what do I need to get? It would probably take like 10 minutes for me to gather whatever it is I need to gather and to make the appointment. And then it would be done.
Right.
And the thing is that's so frustrating to me about myself is the knowledge that I need to make this appointment is really sapping me. So you mentioned in the last segment how avoidance drains us. Well, it's like this is weighing on me. This is on my mind all the time. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, I need to make that appointment. What I need to do is set a power hour and do this as part of my power hour. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, I don't.
Well, that is so interesting. I mean, this is the million-dollar question, right? Which is, you've identified the problem. You need to get this on the books. You know you would be happier if you got it done. You know it wouldn't take that much time and effort. And yet it's not getting done. Now, as an obliger, I would say, is there a form of outer accountability that you can apply here?
I mean, it's hard because I don't know who I would go to.
Right.
They've already been emailing me that I need to make the appointment.
Right.
So that feels like the outer accountability.
Do you want me to unleash my happiness bully self on you?
Oh, gosh.
No.
Probably.
I mean,
I have
this
to
is the
do
thing.
it.
This is the thing, though, is Elizabeth, we have to guard our relationship as sisters. So there's things where you're like, you know what? I don't want you to do it. And I'm like, 100%, I'm going to back off because that part of my personality is often not that much fun for other people to be around it, which is why I ask, right?
Yes.
Here
which
I
is
am,
very
being
nice
responsible.
That you ask. It's funny because one thing when I think about what keeps me from doing it is that another element of it is that Jack's in that phase of life where it's like he has something every day of one sort or another after school. And so scheduling things is in itself stressful.
Yes, it
because
is.
you have to choose, okay, what is he not going to do on this day? Like, how long will it take? Could he still do this other thing? It's like one thing leads to like 5 other things. So I think that's also part of it is I just am like, oh my God, this is such a headache.
Okay, but so this is an important thing to think. If you say to yourself, what's wrong with me? All I need to do is make this simple appointment. But it's not a simple appointment.
Right.
It seems like it would be simple, but it requires you to gather information, juggle a bunch of priorities. You have to think about your own schedule. You have to think about Jack's schedule. You have to be like putting yourself in the minds of all of these other things. Can we pack it in? Do we need to? I mean, there's a lot to it. And so part of it is recognize for yourself. Yes, it may be draining you. And yes, you may be avoiding avoidance, but it's not as simple as, oh, I'm going to call and make a dentist appointment. This is actually a multifactorial, multi-step, extremely boring and tedious problem.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to get it done. You'll feel better when it's done, but it's kind of understandable why it's taken a while because it's going to be really annoying. Because my advice was like, well, why didn't you just like during a commercial break, run and get one piece of information and another piece of information and put together a folder? But it sounds like that's just one part of it.
So anyway, it's, you know, a problem that we all encounter that could easily be solved.
Well, and Alyssa, let me use my new mantra. Scheduling is life.
Oh, yes. You did say that. Scheduling is life.
Because
scheduling is life. I shouldn't resist it.
Yeah.
I should embrace it.
Scheduling
is life. Okay, Gretchen, what is your gold star this week?
Okay, so I want to give a gold star to each of my daughters, and I guess this is Children's Gold Star Week. So Eleanor, without any prompting from me, has sent a couple of emails to her grandparents and then CC'd Jamie and me, where she's reporting in. So like after week 1, she's like, I've been here a week and I love my roommates and this is what it is. And I've signed up for these classes and just a little report. And then a couple weeks later, she was sort of like, and here I am reporting in again. And this is what I'm doing. And I know that the grandparents are so interested. They want as much detail as they can have. They're so interested in her experience. And it's such a loving thing. Like we talk about update and just having people just tell you what's going on in your life makes you feel so much more connected to them. And so I just want to give her a gold star for just doing this on her own initiative. She just had the thought to do it.
Especially at the beginning of college. Yeah. I mean, it's such a whirlwind. There's so much going on. You're so engaged with the world around you.
Right, because you're in that 3-week period too, that 3-week period of social openness that we talked about. But you know what I did, Elizabeth? Just because what you're saying, that this is such a like an intense time, I printed out those emails. You know, I have these file folders where I have their report cards and their birthday party invitations and their school photo and everything. So I thought, oh, well, I'll put this in because I think that when she's a senior or when she's 45 years old, it will be very interesting for her to think, what did I say when I was reporting in from week 1?
Yes. I would love to have that for my first weeks in college.
Right?
I still, though, remember it like it was yesterday. It was such an electric time.
But see, Alyssa, that's what I envy. It's like you have such a better memory for your own life than I do. Well, that's a whole thing that I'm going to do for Project Empty Nest, by the way. Little foreshadowing there. I'm working on my memory. So that's Eleanor's gold star. And then Eliza's gold star is, we've talked about voting and the importance of putting your values out into the world and the empower hour and the idea of using your time. to encourage people to vote. And Eliza is doing that. She is doing that thing through the Vote Forward organization where you write cards and encourage people to vote. And I think it's just terrific. It's a great way to put values into the world. You know, it's something that she can do, even though she's a busy grad student, it's still something that she can do to put her values into the world and to support voting.
Yeah, and that's a great nonpartisan organization.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the resource for this week. Okay, so reading. Elizabeth, you and I love to read.
Yes.
And there's so many reasons to read. It can sharpen our minds. It can boost our moods. It can build empathy. But the fact is, it is fun. If you have a great book to read, it is the most fun there is. So we often hear from listeners that they love reading and they want to get back to reading, but they're having trouble working it into their everyday routine. So this month, the Jumpstart in the Happier app is a week's worth of strategies for really building that reading routine if you slipped away from it. So if you're in the Happier app now, it's in the home screen. And if you're listening to this episode later on, you can still find many tips and strategies for cultivating the habits that you want in the Happier app. So you can log in or download at thehappierApp.com. And Elizabeth, speaking of reading and the habit of reading, what are you reading?
I'm reading The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman.
And I am reading The Third Realm by Karl Ove Knausgaard. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Schedule a sour hour. Let us know if you tried it and if it worked for you.
Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin. And I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft.
And here's your reminder, because we've been talking about the fluency heuristic, here's a couple of rhyming reminders. If you're a fan of the show, make sure your friends know. Love what you hear? Tell a peer.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward.
Gretchen, I was just glancing at my 24 for 24 list.
Yeah.
One of the things is 50 Orange Theory classes. I hit 44 yesterday.
You did!
So
Gold
I am
star.
very close.
You're in
Of course,
great
now I'm
shape.
having to resist the urge to up my number.
Well, you did that last year.
I know. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I'm getting there.
Oh, congratulations. From the Onward Project.
When it comes to happiness and good habits, you know we've got you covered. But who do you turn to when you need smart financial decisions? If your answer is our sponsor, NerdWallet, then you're absolutely right. And if it's not, let us change your mind. Turn to the nerds at NerdWallet. Not only have they spent thousands of hours researching and reviewing over 1,300 financial products, but they have the tools you need to make smarter decisions.
I love that. Looking for a credit card? Go beyond the basic comparisons, filter for the features that matter to you, and read in-depth reviews. Ready to choose a high-yield savings account? Get access to exclusive deals and compare rates, bonuses, and more. House hunting? View today's top mortgage rates for your home sweet home. Make the nerds your go-to resource for smart financial decisions. Head to nerdwallet.com/learn more. NerdWallet. Finance smarter. NerdWallet Compare, Inc., NMLS 1617539.